My first time getting bullied was at age 11. I just moved across the country from an area I was very happy and had a lot of friends to a new area, a new school where I didn't know anybody. So I was the loner. I didn't have anyone to hang out with at break. I didn't have any friends for a long time. So naturally that made me a target. The other kids would bully me for not having any friends. They would tell me things like, no one likes you, you should go back to where you came from. And for a long time I believed them. I really blamed myself for the whole thing. I thought that I was this socially awkward loser who didn't deserve any friends. Eventually I did find a pretty crappy group of friends, but by that point the damage had been done. I had this wall up between me and other people. I wouldn't speak to anyone outside of my main friend group. I stayed super quiet in class because I thought by letting someone in that would give them the chance to hurt me again. But that backfired suddenly when it turned into this massive joke that the whole class was in on. Now I was the invisible kid. People would walk up to me and say, "Who are you?" Obviously mocking the fact that I was so quiet in class. And it felt like everyone was against me. I'd walk into a class and people would instantly start shouting at me, abusing me, and that really damaged my social skills. I didn't trust anyone enough to even have a conversation with them, and that took a long time to get over. Nowadays I'm able to look past a lot of that. I recognise that a lot of people who picked on me just did it because they didn't want to be the target. It's the whole idea of the pack mentality. People join in with the bullying because they don't want to be singled out themselves. So for a lot of people it wasn't really this personal thing. They didn't have anything against me. But there was always this one guy who I couldn't forgive. The worst bully. The one who would take it further than anyone else. Who made my life hell. Who brought me to tears on a couple of occasions. And years later, I'd always wondered what I would do if I saw him again. You know, I'd have these violent fantasies of what would happen if I met him. Now that I'm bigger and stronger, been training martial arts. Could I fuck him up? It was like my life was building to this moment, this confrontation between the two of us, where I could finally get my revenge on him for what he did to me versus him. But something unexpected happened. My younger brother had a chance encounter with my bully. He was walking home from his football club one night and he struck up a conversation with an older guy who he hadn't seen before. It was obviously his first time at the club, but they were getting on quite well. And this guy started sharing a lot of things with my brother. He was obviously trying to pass down some wisdom to him. They got onto the topic of how there's been what seems like a rise in antisocial behaviour in our town. Just teenagers fucking around in the town centre, stealing, causing trouble, that type of thing. And he said to my brother, when he was that age, he used to be one of them. He would be one of these kids, picking fights with strangers, damaging public property, and just doing anything he could to get attention because he wasn't getting any at home. Whilst we were in school together, I knew that this guy's parents had been going through a messy divorce and that his family had been torn apart in quite a horrible way. So I'd always kind of suspected that he might be acting out because of that. But he told my brother some things, some quite personal things about his life. Obviously, I'm not going to give his name out to you, so I will disclose these things. Things had gotten so bad at home when he was younger that at one point, him and his siblings had actually been put into care. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically where the local government deems the parents unfit to look after the children. So they get taken out of the family and put in a home with a temporary family. So obviously quite a traumatizing thing to go through at a young age. And the way my brother described it, he sounded like he had a lot of regret over the way he acted. And he was saying things like, you need to work hard, you need to look after your family. And it was only when my brother came home and he told me this story, he told me the name of this older guy, that we figured out who it was. We like to glamorize the idea that some people are just born evil, that some people are the devil incarnate, and they're put on this earth to make others suffer. But behind each one of your bullies, there's a story like this. And honestly, hearing that, even after all these years, was such a weight off my shoulders. It doesn't excuse what he did, but it feels like closure. The final confirmation that I wasn't to blame for what happened to me, that it was all on him. That's just something I wanted you to think about. So there's an ugly and depressing truth about bullying, and that's that it's kind of impossible to fully heal from it. There are a lot of people who are still very troubled over negative experiences from childhood, and they're dropping hundreds of dollars in therapy to stop having these dark thoughts, to stop feeling so bitter about the past. But unfortunately, it's a problem that can't be solved in the traditional sense. It's not as simple as just clicking your fingers and erasing those memories from your mind. And that feels so unfair because no one asked to be bullied. You didn't ask to carry this trauma into your adult life, but you didn't have a say in the matter. And unfortunately, that's just what happened. We can't change the past. However, as is the case with many things in life, we can change our outlook on them. And this is something I've worked very hard on. In my opinion, this is the closest you can get to moving on from bullying. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to do that. What we're going to be doing is taking this overly negative experience of bullying, trying to make something positive out of that. Now let me catch you right there because I know what you're thinking. How can we possibly turn something as awful as bullying to a positive? negative. And I would have said the same thing a few years ago, because bullying destroyed my self-esteem and it sent me into a depression that almost claimed my life. But take it from someone who has made it out of that, a much stronger person, who doesn't feel so damaged by it anymore. There are ways of reframing trauma to start viewing it not as this positive thing, but as proof that you're tougher than you think you are. So there are a few exercises we can do that really helped me, but I will warn you, it is going to be uncomfortable. I'll fully admit to you right now that there are times when I've broken down into tears doing these exercises, because the memories that it brings up just feel so raw. Like it could have happened yesterday. You can visualize these events in such kind of great detail. So these exercises involve journaling with a pen and paper. Pen and paper in particular is really important, because as opposed to typing it on a keyboard or even saying it out loud, I find that writing things down is very therapeutic. It makes things sink into your subconscious mind. I find that it really alters your beliefs when you're doing it that way. So what I want you to do is journal about an occasion when you were bullied. I want you to write about this thing in great detail. Exactly what happened, who it was that was doing the bullying, how did it make you feel? And if it was a long time ago and you can't remember this specific incident very well, don't worry, because what I find is when you start writing something, even if it's just like a tiny detail about the situation, your brain starts to work and all these other details start flooding into your mind, and eventually you kind of get the full picture of what happened. And that can be very intense because you start recalling all these things that you haven't thought about in years, that maybe you repressed because they were so painful. But this is the first step in healing from that trauma. It's admitting to yourself that this terrible thing did happen to you, that maybe you haven't actually moved past this thing, that maybe it is still affecting you today. And honestly, that it's not something to downplay, that this was a very serious thing that happened to you and should be treated as such. It's not something to make excuses for. Now, the next part of the exercise is going to be even harder for some people, but I want you to really persevere. I want you to push through it. Just try this out, because this is a very important stage of reframing the whole negative experience. You have to humanize your bully. You have to stop thinking about them as this evil, sadistic person who took pleasure in causing you all of the pain that they did. I want you to write down and consider why it was that they were picking on you. What might have been going on in their life that caused them to act this way? Maybe their parents swore at them and beat them every time they messed up. Maybe their grandma was dying in hospital. Maybe they themselves were getting bullied. Usually there is some kind of underlying reason behind their behavior. We just don't see it. Say if you went to school with them, you probably would have spent a bit of time around them, enough time to make an educated guess about what was going on in their life. I want you to write down all the probable reasons why they could have been acting this way. And this is such an important step, because what this is doing is finally taking the self-blame out of the situation. It's finally recognizing that this bullying had nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. This person had their own demons. And yes, they inflicted pain and suffering onto others, which is unfortunate, but that had absolutely nothing to do with you. There was nothing you could have done better. There was nothing you did which was inherently wrong. And that's a very important thing for you to acknowledge. Now, the final step, again, another writing exercise, is something else that I want you to consider. This is going to sound very weird, but again, just be patient with me. Open your mind. Was there anything good that came out of this bullying? Is there any way I can be grateful for this bullying that happened to me? Like, yeah, it sucked at the time and you can't really say it's a net positive effect, but did this lead me to anything for which I'm grateful for? Did I learn any important lessons as a result of this experience? Maybe it was something that started off as an insecurity. You were very out of shape and you got picked on because of it. But perhaps that was the thing that finally led you to joining a gym. Now you're in great health and amazing shape. You have very high self-esteem. Would you have gone to the gym if someone hadn't called you fat? Maybe you got picked on by a group of friends. Maybe they all took turns taking the piss out of you. But now going into the future, you know the type of characteristics you want from a friend group. You know how to pick your friends carefully. And now you're surrounded by an amazing group of people. And the obvious one for me that I think every single victim of bullying can relate to. There's a lot of people who live these comfortable, easy lives who never have to endure any type of suffering. But the second something goes wrong for them, they break down. They don't have any resilience. They don't know how to handle the adversity. But you have that resilience. You have that inner strength that other people don't have. You faced this overwhelming amount of adversity. And sure, it was a terrible thing that happened, but you made it through. You're still alive. So when you do encounter adversity again in your life, you can brush it off because you've made it through much worse in your past. For now, that's all the advice I have to give. Obviously, this is something I'm very invested in. It's personal to me and I want to find ways to help other people who went through what I went through. But honestly, I haven't figured everything out myself. I would like to say I've completely solved all my problems relating to my trauma, but I'm still on my own journey, I'm still learning. But I will say I'll probably make a part 2 to this once I feel like I have more to contribute. So keep practicing these exercises. Keep taking your mind to those dark, uncomfortable places. And try to understand that when it comes to a bully's actions, it's never black and white. No one is born evil.